One of my goals in 2023 was to try and make other kinds of videos. Vlogs, writing vlogs are my bread and butter, but I wanted to challenge myself to try and make more of these chatty sit-down videos. I've always been intimidated by the thought of making a lot of sit-down chatty videos like this, but truthfully they're my favorite kinds of content to watch, especially from writers. I love to just hear writers talk about their experience, what they're stuck on, what's going well, and just sit down and feel like I'm having coffee with them, I'm catching up with them, hearing the latest about their projects. So thank you first to Hudson for encouraging me to stop and make this video to commemorate the end of my reread of Project Gemstone, which is what we're going to talk about tonight. And I also want to thank Katie from Katie Ann Writes, because I've been rewatching a lot of Katie's content. She is like one of my comfort AuthorTuber channels. I was watching her non-tent playlist where she makes chatty videos kind of along the same lines where it's very casual and laid back. That just sounded really nice to me, and I thought maybe that would be a nice way to kind of dip my toes into a more casual video style. So we're just gonna sit down and chat. It's actually almost 8 p.m. I never film when the sun is going down, and I know we are rapidly losing light, but I've got some cozy lights set up. I pulled this room all apart to create this setup. And I've got a mug here with me, so it's just gonna be very chill, and I hope you're okay with that. But anyway, we are talking about the fact that I finished Project Gemstone, my zero draft of season 1, and then I reread the whole thing back to front really quickly. And I just want to talk about what that was like, because I went about it very differently than I've gone about rereads in the past, and I think I was a little smarter this time. I knew from my past experiences that it would be better if I compressed this into as short a time period as possible. And that's what I did. I didn't want to stretch this out and read it over like 2 weeks or a month and let it drag out. I wanted to be very intentional and bust through it. I think doing it that way, it stays in my head, and I have a very good understanding now of the shape of the story I wrote, what chapters follow each other, the timeline of everything, what leads to what, paying really close attention to cause and effect. But also, I scribbled all over this thing, and reading it so quickly meant that I could make connections between later chapters and earlier chapters. And you know, if I'm reading a later chapter, it wasn't that long ago, like a day ago, that I was reading the beginning chapters, and it's still fresh in my mind, and I could say, hey, this spot in chapter 2 would be a really great place to drop this lore or introduce this fact, or world build this more so then it ties back here. And just making those little connections and figuring out how I wanted to foreshadow things was so much easier when the beginning of the book was still fresh in my mind. So yeah, that was basically why I tried to read it so quickly and why I did not make a rereading vlog. So I'm sorry, Hudson, and anyone else that might have been waiting for that, but I literally just read it in like, I think 3 days. And yeah. Of all the parts, I think the beginning is definitely my favorite. The beginning is so light and fun and exploratory, and it reminded me of how much fun I had during NaNoWriMo this year. Fun with world building, fun with character, fun with tone and voice, which is really interesting because I'm not usually a very voicey writer, but Poppy's narration is extremely voicey, and the tone is just so strong, and it's particularly so in the beginning chapters, the early chapters, where I wasn't having to like juggle so much plot, and I really was just focused on like the fun hijinks of the first couple chapters before the season plot really kicks into gear, and just getting to introduce all the side characters and the people that are going to be a part of Poppy's ensemble. And I love them all so very much. And they all play off of each other really nicely, and they all play off of Poppy really nicely, because they all, for one reason or another, are trying to intrude on Poppy's solitude and the little bubble that she has made for herself. She doesn't let people in, but of course this story is all about her doing just that, and learning to accept friendships from others. So it was really fun to get to kind of poke and prod her via side characters as they're getting introduced and pushed into her life. I didn't see a whole lot about the beginning that I'd actually need to change. To be honest, there's little things here and there, and Luke actually read this for me as well, and his blue sticky notes are all things that he wrote down. But even the things that he and I both noticed were little things. And so that's really encouraging that I think at least the beginning of the story will not change too much. And in fact, I could keep a whole lot of it, which for a zero draft feels crazy to say. And maybe I really, really, really hope and don't think that I'm overestimating myself and the quality that this came out as, but it came out so much better than I was expecting. My previous project, my fantasy book, I had to work on 3 drafts before I was ready to get it reprinted and show it to Luke, because I just didn't feel like it was coherent, and I felt like it was missing too many pieces before then, and it changed a whole lot in between those drafts, and this already feels like a draft 3, and I don't know how I did it. I know I wrote it super intuitively. I had a very loose outline, but I think it was also just switching to the serial format. I didn't feel the pressure of a beat sheet, and I kind of just let myself intuitively write whatever I wanted, whatever I felt like would naturally happen next, and the scene that I thought the reader would be most excited to see next. And being able to follow my intuition like that was such a nice change of pace. It was so freeing. It made me connect so much more with the material I zero drafted because I was excited about it. Which sounds obvious, but I think when you've been drilling beat sheets and you're trying to force a story to go a certain way, having an experience where you just let it wander and see where it takes you, that can be really refreshing. One of the reasons why I know that this draft came out better is the markups that I made on this draft as I was rereading. On previous projects, if I tried to mark up a draft, it wasn't even good enough that I could make line level markups. The problems were so huge and so overarching that whole chapters would have to be rewritten or deleted or moved or changed or completely out of the picture, and just whole cloth revisions where getting into it with a pencil and sticky note was not really useful. It was not even to that level yet. But this one was. For each chapter I wrote like little numbers whenever I had a thought or an edit or a change. And then at the end of the chapter, I left myself a notes page where I could write down all the things that I thought of as I was going through. I usually would fill a page of notes for every chapter, but not more than that. So there was a consistent amount of little things. The biggest notes, I think, overall were, the usual stuff. I'm a little bit of an underwriter, so it's things like world building, white room syndrome, explain the magic, pick out names for everything, historical detail. That's another thing for this project. But as far as plot, I think it's gonna stay the same. There's a lot more foreshadowing that I can do. I laid out the track exactly how I wanted it to be. And I wrote the story that was in my head. Which, wow. I just have to pause on that because I can't even believe I just said that. But it's true. Like with my fantasy book, 3 drafts in, I still don't think I wrote the story that was in my head. Not even close. Not even close. And this one I did it in one go. I don't know. I might never be able to replicate this. Something about this project just has a little touch of magic to it. I'm not going to question it anymore. I'm just going to enjoy it. I just want to enjoy it. For the rest of this revision and editing process, I just want to follow that joy that I had when I was doing NaNoWriMo and follow the intuition that got me such a good draft and not overthink everything. I don't feel overwhelmed by the amount of edits that I have to do. I'm a little overwhelmed by the amount of time that I left myself to do them all in. I've mentioned before how much I very, very, very much want to publish this in August, which means I've got to turn the next draft around really quickly. That in itself is intimidating. I really don't want to back down from that challenge. This means a lot to me, being able to put this out in summertime. I really don't want to let myself down. I'm extremely motivated. I think I can say with semi-confidence that with a lot of hard work and intentional time that it would be possible. I have already started the rewrite as of this filming. I'm going to try really hard to finish it in the month of May. It'll be the fastest time I've ever turned a draft around. Again, I once again am worried that I am inflating my ability and becoming a legend in my own mind. I will just keep riding this high until I am proven otherwise. And that may happen when I give the book to beta readers. They may tell me that there's a whole heckin' lot wrong with it that I just missed, that I, had my rose-colored glasses on and didn't see. That's entirely possible. So I'm not going to say that August is 100% possible and doable and done until after beta readers, because my ego may be a little bit inflated by this experience, but it is not so inflated that I am not wary of all the changes that beta readers may reveal. So I do feel equal parts nervousness and excitement about showing this draft to beta readers, and usually it's just all nervousness, no excitement. Because I'm just really proud of it and I believe in it, and even if not everyone likes it, when not everyone likes it, I still think somebody will. I still really think that somebody will. And that's more confidence than I've ever had in any other project. So there you go. To kind of round out this chat, I asked on my community tab for any questions. Okay, first up, I know Poppy is originally inspired by a D&D character you played. How did that impact your writing, and would you say it made it easier to know her as a character / her personality, etc.? The answer to that is 100% yes. Yeah, Poppy started out as a D&D character that I played in a couple of one-shots. She didn't come from a campaign, so a lot of the world and setting and her family history and all the side characters very much came as I was doing the zero draft. She's not taken from a campaign or a larger story. Her character, the fact that she was an artificer, that she had a steel defender, that she had a Corey angel speaking in her mind, like those things came from D&D. Playing her made it so easy to understand her voice and what she would say or think or react, what she valued, what she would do and what would motivate her. That came from D&D. So the fact that she is a self-made businesswoman and she, will go to great lengths and serve all sorts of clientele in order to serve her business, and her love of artificing, particularly in the early chapters of the book, that is what drives Poppy. Your thoughts on handling the number of characters in any given project, the advantages or drawbacks of a small cast versus a large cast. Project Gemstone has 4 main characters. Poppy's the only POV character, but her group is 4. And that still feels small, but it's a lot bigger than my other project. A fantasy novel has 2 characters and a villain. So that project has always felt really isolating, small, a little claustrophobic at times, and I think that honestly is a reason why Gemstone is so freaking fun to write, because I suddenly have all these characters to bounce off of. Luke said when they're all in a room together and the banter is going and the group dynamic is going and Poppy's annoyed and someone else is excited, they're all just opposites of each other in different ways, and so I can always find some sort of reaction to pull out of somebody. I do someday want to do a multi-POV book. I have not had any ideas for that as of yet, but it is a goal of mine. I think I'm learning that the more characters, the better for me. What has been the hardest part and the easiest part about adjusting to writing a serial versus a novel? I didn't think very much about the serial part of things when I was doing the zero draft. I very much just wrote the story that was in my head. And I think the serial piece of things is really going to come in revision, because I'm actually going through and figuring out how to chunk things up into episodes. This draft here in front of me is roughly broken up into chapters, I guess, or long episodes. But that was very arbitrary, the way that I broke it up. I just kind of broke it up when the vibes were right, you know? They roughly are around like 4,000, 5,000 words each. And in my opinion, that's way too long for Vella. So I have to break things up at least in half, if not more, for each of these chapters that I have. And I also am going to be paying particular attention to the endings of every little episode chunk that I end up creating, because obviously you want people to click through the next episode. When we're writing book chapters, we tend to end the chapter on a natural pause, on a natural resting place, on a natural conclusion. You know, if you're doing like a little mic drop moment, you could end the chapter there. And for serials, that's not really what you want. So if the arc of a book chapter goes like this, serials, you want to start your episode and then end it at the moment of highest tension, or a big question or reveal, something that's going to get someone to click, and then you resolve it and start a new one. So it's just where you place the endings is a little bit different. How did you balance smaller stories for episodes versus a bigger storyline running through the entire novel? Is it a bit like a TV show then? I hope that it will feel like a comfort TV show. In my head, it is kind of like an animated series. Like, you know, some animated series just have that vibe where it's a little bit campy and the characters are very quippy, but there's action too, and maybe a mystery, but the gang's all together. You know what I mean? And so as far as the bigger and smaller storylines, I actually, you know, once I had plotted out my big season 1 plot, the overarching plot, I went through a list of TV tropes and like common episode tropes from sitcoms and Monster of the Week shows and procedurals, and took common episode tropes and made a big list, and I pulled a lot of those in to be like my little B plots. Yeah, it'll get chunked up a little bit smaller than I originally wrote it, so it might take like 2 or 3 episodes to get through a little B plot, but there'll be little arcs throughout, you know? As far as balancing them, I did an okay job, but not a great job. The further I got into the middle and I had to start paying attention to that big overarching plot and making that all work and make sense, I dropped all these little B plot arcs and stopped paying attention to all the fun little hijinks things that were supposed to be going on at the same time. And so in the middle and end, it very much felt like I was just writing a standard book, because I was just trying to get through the big plot. And so quite honestly, in the rewrite, that is like the major note that I have. It's not that I have to change the plot around, it's just that I want to keep sprinkling in those fun hijinks and, you know, keep in mind that I want that tone to continue all the way through. Lastly, what excites you most about Project Gemstone now that you're finished your draft and have reread it? Actually, surprisingly, kind of like I said before, it's beta reading. I am equal parts excited and nervous. I think I've just never loved a project as much as this one. I've never felt so much belief in a project the way that I feel in this one, and so I'm just so excited by the thought of someone else enjoying it. And like, that's what books are supposed to be all about, you know, is just enjoying a story and going somewhere else for a little while. And if someone tells me that they got sucked into Poppy's story, then that would mean the entire world to me. That would be so incredibly satisfying. You know, once again, I'm riding a high right now, and future me may decide that this needs a whole heckin' lot more work, and that it's not at all ready. But from where I'm sitting, it feels like something that shouldn't only be mine, if that makes sense. Thank you so much, anyone who submitted a question so that I would have something to talk about in this video. I don't know how well I did on my first chatty, cozy, non-tent video, but hopefully it was enjoyable nonetheless, and maybe I just kept you company while you were folding your laundry or walking somewhere, or driving somewhere, or doing some other kind of chore. And if that's the case, thanks for hanging out with me. Even though these kinds of videos are kind of awkward for me to make, I am really glad that I sat down and did it, so that when the going gets tough and the road gets hard, and the revisions get really tedious, I can look back and remember this excitement that I feel right now for Project Gemstone. And remember that at least at one time I very much believed in it and thought that it was headed somewhere good. Alright, I think that's it for me in this cozy Anna After Dark segment. Let me know how it's going with you, and give me all your project updates in the comments down below. But until next time, how does my outro go? Bye everyone, I'll see you in the next one.